Welcome to a special edition of Eye on Education. I'm your host, Ed Leicius, and we're joined today by the two candidates for the special election to fill a vacancy in the Nashua Board of Education. That election will be held on March 20th. All 9 Nashua wards will be open from 6 a.m. till 8 p.m., and there are only 2 candidates on the ballot. Absentee ballots are currently available at the city clerk's office, and a sample ballot can be found on the City of Nashua's website. With that, let me welcome to the program today Sandra Ziehm, former school board member.
Nice to be here. And
Susan Porter, a recently retired school teacher.
Thank you.
Thank you both for stepping up and for coming in today to talk about the special election. And let me begin with you, Sandra. Why do you want to go back on the school board? Why are you running again?
Well, now let me see. Actually, for me, it's all about the kids, and the memories that I have or that are dearest are about the kids. One of the liaisons, student liaisons, was trying for a scholarship, and I wrote her a letter of recommendation. She came to my home and spent like 2 hours with me, and I grew to love her. And when she got the $20,000, I felt like I won it. so those are the things that I will always remember and hold as most valuable. People are always the most valuable part of anything we do, at least in my mind. That's women are caregivers, don't you think?
We are.
So we tend to think that way.
Mm-hmm. Susan, you just retired after 28 years in Nashua, but a total of about 37 years
34.
teaching. 34.
Yeah.
Why are you running?
Well, I'm a very strong supporter of public education, and I think that obviously working in public education for 34 years, and just because I'm retired doesn't mean that I don't care about public education. I still care deeply, and I think this is a nice way for me to continue and use all the experience I have in a different way to give back to the city.
Great. Public education has been in the light recently with the incident down in Florida. And how safe are Nashua schools in your opinion, Susan?
I think we're safe. I think that it's something that you always, no matter how good your systems are, you should continually evaluate and look for ways to make them better. So I think we have a really good starting point. And we need to work in cooperation with other, police and fire and other safety organizations, because we're always coming back to the kids. And not only are we keeping kids safe at school, we're keeping all the adults who work there safe at school too. So it's something to take very seriously. I think we're on a good footing, and as long as we continually reevaluate, we'll be good.
Sandra, same question.
I thought it was really interesting. Some of the suggestions that came about as a result of Parkland. And at first, when they talked about arming some of our staff, our teachers, that kind of, the hair on my arm stood up and started waving at me. But after I heard the conversation further, they would be certified. These would be, I know of people in our schools who are retired military. They have marksmanship awards. They're qualified. They're not just teachers who've never had a gun and are afraid of guns. And it made sense to me. So I think the conversation that's come about as a result of Parkland has been conversation is always a good thing. This, even just us being here today, is powerful, because if nothing else, hopefully we're promoting ideas. And ideas are the beginning of growing, of improving, of getting better. So and that's why I'm delighted that you ran, and that there are 2 of us, so there is a dialogue, so that the public gets involved and hears what's about our schools. They need to.
Susan, what do you think about arming teachers?
I am not for that at all. I think that we need to have everybody in the schools feel safe. And I think that that's an environment that you create. And I think that if you want kids to feel safe and adults to feel safe, we could put our resources, I think they'd be better spent with guidance counselors, psychologists, social workers, people who can, you need the personnel to have personal relationships with kids and to notice things as they happen. So if there are resources, I would be more comfortable with that. I think that not knowing in school who has a gun, it just opens up to a lot of mishaps, in my opinion. So I think we need to keep schools safe, and we do need to talk, and we need to talk these things out.
I wish we had money, Susan. You're talking about the psychologist. Obviously, mental health is such a huge issue. It breaks my heart, the things that, and you must have seen much more than I have. But resources are, they have been the hugest source of anxiety for me in my time, because you inevitably have to make terrible choices.
Yes.
Do you get the social worker or the psychologist? You need both. So how do you determine which?
That's a conversation. But I would hate to sidestep that and just go straight to guns in school. I think that there might be.
Going to, and that's where the conversation maybe hasn't ended. But see, I was not envisioning that these would be paid. These would be like, I'm speaking of, I know teachers in our district who are retired military, who have the qualifications. And so I don't think they would be paid, but now that would be part of the conversation.
It would be.
And so maybe, but our schools, I think our schools are safer than Parkland, and you, Ed, may add some. You're obviously involved with our police, and so I feel that we've spent a small fortune on trying to secure our schools and making sure that people can't just walk in off the street.
But I think as we're having the conversation, we need to be really mindful of intended and unintended consequences. So, to really think that
makes you think of Concord, doesn't it?
In that same vein, on later this month, on the 14th of March, there's going to be a nationwide march of students out of the classroom to show their solidarity for Parkland and the gun issue, to raise awareness of it. How do you feel about that? Do you support something like the students in Nashua doing that, Sandra?
I haven't been part of that conversation, but I understand it's going on. And I think it requires, sometimes we respond to a panic button. Parkland is, to some extent, I mean, all those kids that was awful. And so naturally everybody becomes passionate. My concern is that, as with the security, we need to have long conversations, and the whole community needs to be involved in these conversations so that we're well informed, and so that we've thought out all of the unintended consequences, because there are many, you know better than me, probably.
There can be.
So I would like to see us have the conversation, and through the conversation, if nothing else, educate the public and our district, our city.
Susan, you support the students and their planned walkout?
I do. I think it's a valuable experience. It's an opportunity to have kids learn in the real world about civic engagement. I think it gives teachers, we're always looking for a real world situation to tie learning into. And I think that there's a lot that kids could learn about government and public speaking and forming opinions based on evidence. So I think it's something that schools could really capitalize on and make it a really wonderful learning experience. And who knows, when kids learn that, they're very close to being 18 and being citizens of our community. And we want people who are knowledgeable and who will speak out. And so I think it's a great opportunity.
At one time, they actually talked about community involvement for the kids, and they could earn credits, if you will, that it would be part of their learning education plan, if you will. I don't think it was controversial. Different people had different views about it, and so I'm not sure it ever got to where it should have been. I certainly agree with you that participation is the best way to learn. Hands-on is always better.
That's right.
Books are wonderful, but until you actually get in the kitchen and cook, you don't know
you
what
want
you're
to
going to burn.
take all those lessons in civics and government and see how it actually works.
And one of our problems, in my view, in Concord is that we don't have a representative. They're all old folks like me, and that concerns me because it's not representative. And so I think that we do need to be representative. We need to hear from all of our different age groups, diversity, because Nashua is very diverse.
Yes.
And that's, in my view, one of our strengths.
It really is.
Yes,
it really
is one of our strengths.
Yeah.
So capitalizing on it.
The board that you each seek to serve on has been through some peaks and valleys over the last several years. There's been some discord amongst the members sitting on that board. We'd had a major turnover in the management of the school district, superintendent, assistant superintendents. And in a recent newspaper article, Sandra, you suggested that part of the solution to perhaps some of the discord would be to follow parliamentary procedures properly. Could you expand a little bit upon that?
And obviously, parliamentary procedure is only as good as its implementation, like anything else. But the board has been, it's not healthy for the district when we sow seeds of discord. If I can't disagree with you agreeably, then I need to go home and keep quiet. Because rather than solving problems, I create problems. And the bridge is lost. Now there's a roadblock and there's no bridge in sight. And so I think that it's misused. It is, in my view, and not everybody would agree with me, but, and some of that is that we have had a change in leadership, and so when you first chair, it's a learning process, and there is no way to learn. There's no way to learn how to be number one. It only comes when you're doing it. And so I think of that with Dr. Mosley. I think he's done, I love Dr. I don't love him in that sense, but I love him as a human being. I find him to be a human being of great compassion and caring, and he's a team builder, which I think we need. I think team is, two people are always better than one, and three are better than two. So the more teamwork we have, the more productive we're going to be, the better we're going to be, the healthier we're going to be. And so, I would like to see. I think that when people, there's nothing I can do. If you're on the board and I'm the chair, and you have temper tantrums, or you tend to get nasty with people, I can only say point of order. I think at some point in time it becomes the responsibility of the individual who's misbehaving. But to some degree, the chair doesn't, and I'm certainly not casting aspersions on Mrs. Oden, whom I love greatly and find to be I find her to be one of the best board members I've ever known, to be honest with you. But I think it's a hard position to control people who choose to be uncontrollable. I mean, you know.
So if you are reelected to the board, there appears to be a split in this current board of 6 and 2. What would you do to try to coalesce the 2 into becoming part of the 9 and still have their opinions and disagreement on issues, but to tone it down maybe?
I think if you look back at the experience that I had on the board, there was a time when I was chair that I encountered a little obstinance, shall we say, and I was very firm. I said, you had your turn, it's my turn. I would appreciate it if you would sit down. I would appreciate it if you would stand down, if you would stop. And it continued this back, and I said, no. It's my turn, and I will not listen to what you... At some point in time, and does it change that person? No. But it sends a message that there's an acceptable way. I do think you have to do it in control. I don't think you can do it in a temper. And am I saying that I've always done it perfect? Absolutely not. I don't think anybody ever does it perfectly. And it's a difficult... The board now, I feel especially bad for the new members who are coming on facing this hostility almost. And I feel more than the board members, I feel sorry for our district, for our kids, I had one of our assistant superintendents say to me one time, I was apologizing to him because there had been unnecessary hostility. And he looked me in the eye and he said, Sandra, never worry about me, I'm a big boy. But he said, always remember that it works its way down into the classroom, and in the end, it is the kids who suffer for that misbehavior. And when I get in those circumstances, I try to remind myself that I'm here for the kids. And if I'm going to make it worse, then I've destroyed my whole purpose for being here. So I need to go home. I need to stop. I need to sit down and shut up. So just that simple.
Susan, if you're elected, You'll bring the number to 5 of the new board members. How do you see your role, and what would you do to try to bring those other 2 into the fold and still have a fair and open debate on issues, but then move forward in a positive manner?
Well, that's going to be a challenge, I'm not going to lie. I mean, that's a tough thing to do. But I think that the temperament of a person, setting a tone, it's not going to happen right away. Trying to let people know that you're not for or against people. You're for a Nashua school district. You're for children. So I think that when conversations go awry, you want to just always bring yourself back to how is this impacting our students? How is this impacting our schools? You know, I hope to build relationships outside of the venue of the televised meeting. I think it's important that people know that you're not vindictive. You're not there for any agenda. You're there for the kids. So, you know, I hope
Dr. Mosley, I remember when he was just new on the board, I was so impressed. It was to a point of bickering. Sorry for the bad word, but it was. And he quietly, very quietly, no raising of the tone at all. He said, I have to ask myself if we're setting an example for our kids. They are watching. We are the example for them. And I asked myself if this is the example we want to. I have to tell you, that was one of the times that I said, I really like this man. And the district, I believe the district's very lucky to have him. I believe that he's going, you know, nobody walks on water, but I think he's a good human being, and I'm glad to see. And you, if you should win, you will enjoy his leadership. It's
Being the devil's advocate for a moment, people will say that the November election, not only for the Board of Education, but the Board of Aldermen, where 9 new people were elected, was a message from the citizens that they want change and change in the attitude. Is that a fair assessment?
in my view, it's not, but everything's in the eyes of the beholder. You have to understand, well, from my perspective again, the issue that drove that election, in my view, was the privatization of the custodians. And they were in our wards, in every ward, from open to close, giving out, may I offer you this slate of people to vote for so that we won't lose our jobs. Now, please don't misunderstand me. I don't want to privatize our custodians. I would like to see moderation in all things, because when I give to one, I take away from another. So I feel that everything I try to look for the abuses, for the too muches, for how can I save money to put back in the classroom so I can have that psychologist, that social worker, that reading specialist, the paraprofessionals. We've reduced down, the paraprofessionals we have are almost all one-on-one, because we can't afford paraprofessionals pretty much. I think that's a sad, those people make like $25,000, and there's the service they bring to our kids, in my view, and I mean, there's always an exception, but in my view, it's inestimable. They bring great value. When you have 30 kids in a class, how many reading groups can one teacher do? And so if you have this paraprofessional, now you can do this, and you can try to reach the needs of every child, which I think sometimes, in my view, we reach the high-end kids, we reach the poverty more. But those kids in the middle sometimes get the short stick, if I'm saying that well. Sometimes they pay the price because this budget, you'll love it. It's so fun. I hate it. Every year I say, please God, can I just get through this without going through a budget? But obviously, and even now the budget is very, if you've been watching, you see that the mayor said one thing, which is not unusual, and of course the needs are another thing, and then of course you've got the three factions coming together to try to bring it again so that we do the most with what we have, because obviously more would be a good thing. I often think about our big towns like Manchester and Nashua. we have the poverty, and poverty brings its own problems. And I don't begrudge helping those kids. God knows, I was one of those kids. But the need is greater when you have kids that come from poverty, and they say we have 44% on free and reduced lunch. In my opinion, that's not really reflective of the true poverty we have. It's more like 60% in my view, because the bar that the federal government puts for poverty is too low in my view. And so when you have that kind of poverty, kids coming to school who are hungry and tired and anxiety-ridden, they need more individual time. And when you've got one teacher and you've got 23, 25 kids and no paraprofessional, I don't have...
It's hard.
It's very hard. It's...
Susan, in the same vein, there will be those who would suggest you're only running to represent the teacher's point of view here in the city, having just retired. What do you say to that?
My goodness. My goodness. Being a teacher is an asset. It's not a detraction to a person serving on the Board of Ed. I think that being a teacher, I have a window into what it's like on being in a classroom and being on the front lines. I know what it looks like when policies are implemented on a federal or a local level. I know what that looks like, and I think that that's an asset. Do I know a lot of teachers? Yes. I've been working in Nashua for 28 years. I have dear friends and colleagues, and I think that that also is going to be an asset to me because I don't know everything, but I know how to find out. I know people personally who are, in classrooms on all levels, from preschool through high school. And again, we're there for the kids, and teachers are always there for the kids, so that's great. We're there for the parents, we're there for the families. So I think that what the experience and the life experience and professional experience I have can kind of round out the experience of other people on the board.
I can tell you that Mrs. Oden was invaluable, and it was for the very reasons that you are citing. I'm not trying to get you elected, but I think your point is very well taken. And whether I get it or you get it, I like to think that the children will be better.
That's what we, yes.
And whether I serve on the board or I serve somewhere else, I think we all have a role in the community. You've been very faithful to our community. You've always been a servant.
Oh, thank you.
We need more Ed Licious types.
Yes.
We do, truly we do. And so I tell myself, you serve where you are. When you see the need, you do what you can.
That's right.
And you try to make it better. And not always able to do today. The needs are so great. Our country, the needs are. Downtown Nashua, you're walking around and they're high on a kite. You can see them. They're about ready to fall over. And I'm laughing, but I laugh to keep from crying. And they have children, and they go home to their children. I heard a story, you maybe heard it, where a first grader came home and the mother had OD'd, and she was the one who found the mother in the bathroom. Can you imagine a first grader coming home to find their mother dead in the floor? And how do you teach that child? How do you say, come here now and let's read this book, honey, when she's so emotionally wound up?
Times have certainly changed.
Oh,
Yes.
and unfortunately not for the better in all cases, but.
We'd informed both of our candidates that we'd give them an opportunity before we concluded to make a closing statement. So Sandra, we'll begin with you.
Okay, well, I'll do the best. I didn't prepare for this very well because I have a cold today. But I would say to you that I do think that continuity is a good thing. In our case, of course, Susan has continuity as well because she's been in the district forever. I am a small business owner. I'm very concerned about spending money that we don't have, trying to live within our means and maximize what we can do with our means. And so I would continue that. I would also, I think it's important for whoever gets it to build a rapport with our aldermen. Obviously, we work with the aldermen. In the end, they have the final say, and the mayor. And so I need to shut up. But I think we need to build a trust relationship with those people so that we can sit and talk with them as friends and have a bridge, not a roadblock. Thank you.
Thank you. Susan?
I thank you for this opportunity to talk. It's been great meeting with both of you. As I said, being a very strong supporter of public education, I really and truly believe that it's the backbone of a democratic society. And I want our students to be educated not just in reading and writing and math. I want them to be productive citizens no matter what it is that they pursue. So I just from that strong conviction from public education, now that I'm retired, I'm able to serve in a different way. I know that there are a lot of challenges working with other people. I look forward to building relationships with all of the stakeholders. I think that I haven't been on the Board of Ed before, but I have been on numerous committees. All of the teachers listening out there will know you over the years you're on many, many committees, and you're working with a variety of personalities, a variety of ideas, and you're still focused on student outcomes. So I think that that will help me as I'm dealing with the people on the board. I ask for your support, and whoever wins. I know that Sandra also cares deeply about our schools, so I think that we'll see where it goes. Thank you.
I'd like to thank both of you for stepping up and putting yourself out there for the voters to choose from. The election is March 20th. Polls will be open in Nashua from 6 a.m. till 8 p.m. Absentee ballots are now available at the city clerk's office, and you can go on the city's website to see what the sample ballot looks like, but it's pretty simple. There are just 2 names. Sandra Ziehm, Susan Porter, thank you so much for running, and thank you for being here with us today.
Thank you.
This has been a special edition of Eye on Education. I'm Ed Lecious. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.